Hey everybody, Questwise here. This series, I believe it's going to be a series. I think this is going to be one of those things I'm going to be talking about for a little while. It's been a long time in coming, and it is GURPS. GURPS, right? I heard this once referred to as the greatest role-playing game that nobody ever plays. And I want to explore it. And the reason I want to explore this more is because it is a great game. It really is a great game. It's designed very well. Uh, and lately I've been thinking about a lot of stuff. I just rewatched the movie Event Horizon, which, if you haven't seen, is a fantastic science fiction horror movie. I've been listening to a lot of Coheed and Cambria, fantastic band who has some their albums tend to be very sort of rock opera type metal storytelling, sort of linked songs and stuff that have sort of a science fiction vibe to them. In fact, the lead singer also had put out a series of graphic novels called the Emery Wars, which are very science fiction inspired. And I've been thinking a lot about the Dune novels as well as the upcoming Dune movie, the new rehash of that. And I know that there's going to be, it's already been announced that there will be a new Dune board game, as well as a new Dune role-playing game in the works. But I got to thinking about all three of these, and I got to thinking about how I wanted to create a campaign that is science fiction inspired, but it was also very decadent and very dark, and linked to this idea of space travel and the outer reaches of the known universe. And so the idea I came up with was that in the future we would build a exploration ship, a huge ship, a generation ship that would travel to the stars, and that we had studied very carefully a certain star that had the possibility of planets and inhabitable planets surrounding it, and that these families who were specially trained for exploring the stars would board the ship with the idea that they might not come home. They were going to go and explore far reaches of the galaxy, and they would create this thing, this mass driver, sort of a black hole generator, as it were, that would compress space and launch them towards the star. And with that, they, something bad happens. So they're intending to, they've reached this gate, and they have the ship lined up, and they begin to inhibit or start up this mass generator that's going to launch them through space. It's going to kind of compress space, almost fold space, to the point where they can just sort of rocket through to the star very quickly. But as they do so, there is some kind of a failure, an explosion, and it kicks the ship sideways inside the gate, and too late for them to back out of the process, and launches them to a completely different star. And when they arrive there, they encounter a system, actually just a star that has no planets surrounding it, but has 5 distinct city-state type of created worlds, living worlds created around the star, but it's very dark and very decadent, and has some very horror-themed concepts to it. Things like, themes of dark themes like cannibalism and slavery and harvesting of humans, or harvesting of beings as food and as a work source, and some very dark themes. And it would take a very special group. You would want to make sure that your group was okay with some of these themes as you explored them. But I wanted a very sort of like Event Horizon sort of dark theme to it. And I was trying to figure out what game system I could use to run this. And the first thing that came to mind was GURPS, because GURPS is perfect for this kind of thing. Now, if you're not familiar with GURPS, GURPS stands for Generic Universal Role-Playing System. Okay? it is just that. And it can emulate everything from superheroes to horror to fantasy to science fiction to whatever you want, westerns, however you want to do it. These books are amazing. I have quite a few of them. The main fourth edition comes as the 2 books in the basic set. Characters, this is creating characters. Everything you need to create characters in the worlds that you're trying to play in. And the second book is called Campaigns, which are like most of the rules and how things work. One of the books I'm going to use to tell this story is this, the GURPS Space. And what's great about these books is that they're packed with so much information that you can use them basically as a reference for any role-playing game. So I could use this for any sort of science fiction inspired space role-playing game, because there's a lot of stuff in here that's not just rules. There's a lot of things in here about encountering aliens and different star systems and different types of stars, and how galaxies and star systems and solar systems are created, how they're set up, giving you sort of real science background to a lot of those things. Locations and orbital zones, worlds, building worlds, nanotechnology, all that stuff is in here. It's really, really cool. So you can use these for anything. The problem with GURPS is that it is just that. It is generic and universal. So teaching somebody how to play is rather easy. It is very simple. It's a D6 based game where you're rolling 3d6 and you're adding some stuff, a couple modifiers, trying to hit a target number. Playing the game and teaching the game is super simple. It's the work that comes before you come to the table. It is very heavily weighted towards the game master and a lot of work. Now, they do have some setting guides already out there. There are a lot of examples of archetypes and stuff for characters that are already pre-built and set up, especially in here, which I'm going to use a lot of these. In the back of this, it already sets up a lot of archetypes, so I don't have to build them from scratch. Things like the space soldier and things like the merchants and pilots and all that kind of stuff are already kind of pre-statted up in here and can be tweaked. But if you're going from scratch, which I kind of am for this whole idea, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of crunching numbers. There's a lot of deciding what to use and what not to use. And there are billions of different options in these books of things to add and to omit and how to tweak to change to fit the theme that you're trying to go for. So there's a lot of workload on the part of the game master before you even get to the table. Once you get to the table, the game itself, playing the game, is actually very simple and is very story driven. It's very a narrative experience when it happens. It's just that there's so much work on behalf of the game master to get to where you want to be. And like I said, then there are some stuff out there that are already pre-generated. There are some certain worlds. There's the one called Banestorm, which is sort of a campaign setting that is already preset, ready to go, and you can use those for whatever you want to do. But to tell a story like I want to tell, that I just explained to you, there's a lot of work on my behalf of creating that place, right? Creating the ship itself, the people on the ship, how the ship works, the resources that are available on that ship. The star, one of the ideas I had was that the star has this mutating effect on people that live there for a long period of time, and it mutates them into having psychic abilities. And sometimes those are good and sometimes those are bad. They give them abilities psychically, but they also have deterring effects when used. And so I'm going to draw in from the Powers book as well too, which is basically designed for superheroes, but it has the whole section on psychics and psionics and psychic abilities that I want to weave into this as well too. So one of the great things, if you're a world builder and you love those kind of things, GURPS will give it to you. GURPS will give you so many options it'll blow your mind. The problem is it gives you so many options that it will blow your mind. And it's one of those things that's sort of great and it's bad. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of weeds to dig through to get to where you want to be. But once you're there, the experience is wonderful. The game flows very smoothly. It's very simple to teach. Like I said, it's very intuitive. It's very narratively and story driven, but getting there is a process if you're starting from scratch. But like I said, if you're a world builder and you love those kinds of things, even if you're not using GURPS to play GURPS, if you're just using it as reference books, these things are amazing, and they're definitely worth having as part of your library. So this is part 1 of this series. I just gave you a basic overview of how I want to do the game, but in the coming weeks or so, I'm going to put together how I'm doing those things. I'll talk about how I'll probably start with how I created the generation ship or the exploration ship, and its crew and staff. I'm thinking I probably will have pre-generated characters to at least start the game with once I get it rolling, or at least I'll have archetypes available for the players to choose what they want to play. But then I'll have to go into detail about the star and how it works and what the spaces around it, what these sort of independent city states are like and how they're linked and how they're sort of rivals to each other. So lots of work, but I think that this will be kind of a fun thing. There's not a lot of stuff on the internet, at least on YouTube, about GURPS, and I think it really deserves some screen time. It really is really that much of a great game that it just really deserves to be talked about. And I'll detail my process of how I'm going to work my way through this and bring this all into fruition, hopefully, eventually. And we're kind of coming to the end of this whole COVID-19 thing. Hopefully, keeping our fingers crossed, we're starting to see things on the decline in a lot of spaces. And so, this would be a great time to work on these ideas and get them all together so that when this is all over and we're able to all get back together and do things at a table face to face, you can do this kind of thing. I may also run this online for some friends as well too, if anybody's interested. Maybe kind of a play test idea, sort of start building the ideas as I'm playing them out to see if they work. In the meantime, of putting this all together and stuff as well too. But GURPS part 1. I don't even know what to call my campaign yet. It's that fresh and new in my brain, but it's just been something I've been sort of mulling over for the last 3 or 4 days. And like I said, I think GURPS is such a good game and such a good sort of reference that it deserves a little bit more screen time. So until next time, stay safe, my friends. Game on. I'm Questwise, and I am out.